Welcome to the Healthy Habits for Active Aging podcast with your hosts, physical therapists Dr. Michael Gorman and Dr. Lauren Bennett. This podcast will discuss a variety of health-related topics focused on educating the aging adult, allowing for an active lifestyle no matter the age. Don't forget to rate, subscribe, and share. Enjoy the show.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Healthy Habits for Active Aging podcast. Today is some very exciting news. We have two things. First of all, it is episode 20 of the podcast. We are going strong. Second of all, I am flying solo today without Dr. Michael Gorman. I'm by myself, Dr. Bennett, and I have a very special guest that I'm interviewing today. And her name is Chelsey Lampros. Not only is she well-known physical therapy assistant out there, but she is the lifting mechanics guru. And that is what we are talking about today. How to properly lift, cues to avoid injury, different advice on weights, how to do it, and how to progress. So I'm going to leave it to the specialist to talk about that. But welcome to the podcast, Chelsey. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lauren.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a physical therapist assistant, and I also have a very strong powerlifting background. I was always really into working out, but then I got into powerlifting in about 2013. And from there, I kind of set some goals for myself. My goal is to total over 1,000 pounds. So I ended up doing that 2016. I did a meet in Kentucky, and I totaled 1,057 pounds, making me at the time the 5th strongest woman in my weight class in the entire world. So that was really cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So, and then for those of you that don't know, powerlifting, very simple. It's you squat, you bench, and you deadlift. So your basic push, pull, and then what you do is you total that. So I did a 425 squat, 225 bench, and then a 405 deadlift. So and then they kind of look at your body weight and they go into different classes. And so all of it is very centered around lifting mechanics. The better mechanics you have, the better that the more weight you can lift. And of course you want to be able to do that safely. And then that's I started doing that. Unfortunately, I ended up with a back injury because I did not have the best of coaching at the time. So that led me to physical therapy, which then I learned how to lift better. All my mechanics change. I kind of started a little bit lighter, cleaned up my technique, and then I ended up going to school for physical therapy, became a physical therapist assistant, so then I could teach other people how to do the same thing. So yeah.
That is awesome. That is quite impressive, I would say. And when I first met Chelsey, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago from now, is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, 4 or 5 almost, actually.
4 or 5 years ago, she started telling me about her background, and I was like, there's no way, like, you're so little, you lifted all that. And then she taught me a lot of lifting mechanics that she learned from her trainers that I also, as a PT, got to use with my patients. So we had the privilege of working together for a long time, and I would just give her like so many athletes, so many people getting into lifting. She truly has all the knowledge. So we welcome her again today to share that with you all. So we are doing this podcast because if you've been following us along the past couple episodes, we've done things on low back pain, sacroiliac joint pain, the use of cortisone injection, chronic pain, pain management, and platelet-rich plasma injections. So we're kind of tying it all together. But if you have all that knowledge, we want to avoid the injury in the first place. So that's why we're using Chelsey's expertise today. You may be sitting here thinking, well, I don't want to become a power lifter. How does this apply to me? Well, she's going to go over very simple things today, like okay, you want to lift a box at your house, like household chores. You want to lift a box. You want to lift your grandchild. it could be 20 pounds still. If you don't lift it correctly, you could be more susceptible to injury. Would you agree, Chelsey?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is people end up having an injury whenever they do something they're unprepared for. So we're
Mhm.
not picking things up every day. If you're not training and working under a heavy load, and then you go to, oh, I can move that, no big deal. Your tissues, you don't have that preparedness. So if a lot of people think working out, it's more of a chore, but really it makes you more fit for life. So if you're going to if you're prepared for something, you go to lift a box or whatever, it's going to be a lot easier if you've been at the gym lifting other weights or just, doing those motions. So injury usually occurs whenever you exceed the capacity that tissue can handle. So that's why it's so important that we are constantly building that. I think something that most people don't know is after the age of 30, our muscle mass
Mhm.
starts to decrease from 3 to 8% every decade, and then that gets even higher of a percent decrease once you hit 60. So if you build a solid base now, that's gonna be such a good carryover for whenever you're in your later years.
Yeah, that is absolutely true, and something that we have discussed in like one of our first podcasts going back. So thank you for bringing that back for us. Some people are prepared. They may have jobs where they have to lift a ladder. They're doing a lot of bending, lifting, twisting, and we see construction workers in jobs that yield more injuries. But according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, about 86,000 reported cases of lifting related injuries happen each year in the US. And those people do undergo training, but this is just to tell, like Chelsey said, if, sometimes it is an expected weight and you're conscious of it, but other times you're just picking up and flinging it. And so you really have to think about things, and you don't want to, as we saw, so call it, tweak the back. So okay, so now that Chelsey's told us a little bit more about herself, she's going to start sharing some information for us today. And the first thing I would like you to address, Chelsey, is you mentioned the strength component, but what are the total benefits of powerlifting or strength training in general?
So one of the biggest things, it's gonna build up your bones, right? I mean, you're
Mhm.
lifting all that weight, you have strong bones, your endurance, if you want to be able to stand and walk, do things all day, if you're doing something that exceeds that in the gym, if you're pushing yourself in the gym, your daily activities are going to be so much easier. So you don't have to go crazy. I mean, I think it's recommended 30 minutes a day for 5 days a week,
Okay.
or a total of 150 minutes a week. So, you can break it up as you need to, but, going up and down stairs, long walks, picking up, the lady started with me, she was like 86, I think. And I worked with her since she was 90. And she's like, I can pick, she has great grandkids. And she said, I got to hold my great grandbaby, cause I'm strong and I can do it because she's been training. So it goes a long way, overall, just to help with everyday activities in life.
Great. So if you want to go over some lifting mechanics for us, pretend it is a grandchild or just a box of paper or bottle water case, like whatever it may be at home. Could you go over how to properly lift, how to set yourself up, and cues for people?
Yeah. So I have a ball over here. It's a little weighted ball. So we'll practice picking that up and just things to think about. Most of the time, people are bending over, they're getting ready to lift something that, they're not prepared for, or if they just think, oh, I can just throw this up. So we'll go over some lifting
Okay.
mechanics, picking things up. Um, So one of the things you'll see is people just slouch out, they slouch and they go to grab. Well, you're leaving your back is very susceptible to injury there. What you need to do is widen your base of support, give yourself a good base of support, and hinge back. So these hip muscles, a lot of people think a squat is this motion, but
Mm.
you need to sink your butt back because your hips much bigger joint here than your knees, and then also that bending over motion, we're not using these muscles at all. We're just kind of hanging out on this low back. So if you widen your base, sit down, pick it up. So more of a sitting back and lifting. And then anytime you want to pick something up, you want to get as close as you can. So, you pick up that grandbaby, you're not going to carry it around like this. It's going to be really heavy. So when you go to pick something up, you want to make sure you're keeping it close to your body. And you're another good cue that I like to tell people, when you lift something from the ground, if you have to pick up something heavy, think of it as a push instead of pulling this weight up. I'm pushing with my legs, and then my legs do the work. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I see is people think of it as just they're going to yank this up, and that leaves us susceptible to all this injury. When really you just push through your legs. You push through the legs, bring it up, and that'll help avoid any kind of further injury there.
Okay. Yeah. It almost looks like you're just kind of sitting back, almost like you're sitting in a chair.
Yeah. Sitting back into a chair is a good cue that I usually use.
Okay. And then I've heard, and I kind of tell patients too, when they're doing a squat, the whole, like, don't let your knees go over your toes. And I know that that can be kind of like controversial, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's an old school thought.
Okay.
It really depends on our leg length, right? Like if I have a long femur or my torso short or tall, it doesn't. The biggest thing is the reason why they say no, don't let your knees go over your toes. When my knees go over my toes, I'm putting a ton of pressure on my knees. So that's why I get you to sit back, because that load goes to these bigger structures, your hips. If your knees go over your toes a little, that's fine. What causes the injury is whenever you put a ton of weight over your knees go over your toes a ton, and they were not prepared for that, you're in a susceptible position to give yourself some knee pain. So if you say, I don't do squats because I have bad knees, well, that's the worst thing. You should do squats because you have bad knees, but you need to, you don't squat like this. You need to hinge back, and now that pressure is off the knees. Because you sit and stand all day. Every time you go to the bathroom, you stand up from a chair. Your squat's the most practical exercise that you can do.
Okay. Very helpful. Thank you. So what if you're a beginner? Say you're listening to this podcast today and you're like, this is really entertaining. I think I could do this. I want to get started. Where should I start?
Well, if you are truly a beginner and you have, little knowledge on that, I'd say definitely reach out to, whether it's, if you have an injury, go to a physical therapist, work with somebody who works with people that have injuries. If you're having low back pain, or you have knee pain or something, I would say physical therapist first, and then you can transition into like a personal trainer. But if you're a pretty healthy person, just go into a personal trainer or go into a gym and trying to, start on maybe the machines or just some light weights. A lot of the machines have descriptions there so that you can read, what you're supposed to do. And then you can always ask questions. But just because you're a beginner doesn't mean that, just ask questions and reach out to professionals. That's why people are in the field, they want to help people.
Okay. So I would say that would stay the same for somebody, say they have a diagnosis of like osteoporosis, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes people may say, well, I have osteoporosis, like I'm afraid to lift anything. Do you think that that's necessarily true, or can they be a power lifter or get into strength training with weights?
Oh, I think that's a reason to get into strength training.
Right? Yes. Yeah. Thank you. I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah. Because what's that going to do? It's going to build up, all your structures in your body, build up the bones, build up the muscles, make you less susceptible to injury. So that, clearly you're not going to be doing the same thing as maybe somebody who doesn't have that condition. You're not going to lift it heavy, but that it's not necessary. Just start light and work your way up.
Okay. Very good. All right. So, our podcast is Healthy Habits for Active Aging, which I don't know if you know this, but the definition of actually aging at this point is anything over the age of 50, which is like crazy young. But so people are getting more into, I'm 50. I want to make sure I'm staying active. I'm staying strong. So, over the age of 50, I know that they're saying that perks of weight lifting literally goes to the end of life, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So like you could be 90, you could be 100 and still be weightlifting. Okay. So very good.
The biggest thing I see with people that do, if it is powerlifting and not just working out, I mean, the biggest thing I hear from people is, oh, I'm not strong enough to do a competition, or I'm not ready. Like, no one's ready. You just got to do it. And
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. You're never ready. You just have to do it. And there's a woman in Tampa, Florida, actually. She started lifting at 91 years old. That's when she started. She went on to do 14 competitions, and she set a world record at 100 years old. So there's no,
Wow.
Anybody can do it at any time. That's the beauty of it, that, you set goals, you just set little goals, and that's what makes it fun. I did 20 pounds last week. I'm going to do 25 pounds this week, or 10 reps last week. Can we do 12? And you can just kind of watch yourself improve, and it gives you that motivation. So the biggest thing is setting goals, achieving those goals, and you can see how, the human body's amazing.
Yes. And I think if you are going to get started on something like this, keeping a log or a chart, not only so that way you can know your progressions, but that you don't progress too quickly and end up with an injury, and make sure that you are progressing, and have something to chart and something to log so you can speak with a professional about it. So, okay. Well, thank you so much, Chelsey, for joining us today. We really, really appreciate your expertise and you sharing how to properly lift with our audience. And I know that it's very, very helpful knowledge that will hopefully allow people to take up a new hobby and avoid any injuries in the future. So, as always, we thank you for listening to us weekly, subscribing, sharing us to your family and friends. We really appreciate all of you listeners. If you would like to suggest a topic for a future episode, please email us at info@imovephysicaltherapy.com. We do check those emails routinely and get really, really excited when we do have one. So even if it's just to say hi, we appreciate it. So again, thank you, Chelsey, for joining us today. And we hope you have a great week. We hope you have a great week, and stay tuned for our mystery topic next week. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Healthy Habits for Active Aging podcast. If you have any questions for Dr. Gorman or Dr. Bennett, please send an email to info@imovephysicaltherapy.com. To learn more about healthy aging, visit our website at imovephysicaltherapy.com. Like what you hear? Be sure to rate and subscribe. See you next week.